In the latest developments of the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is in Paris for a summit with European leaders just hours after what has been described as one of the most significant attacks on his hometown Kryvyi Rih. The Russian military launched a barrage of over 100 drones targeting various locations across Ukraine, including Kryvyi Rih and the northeastern Sumy region. This assault occurred shortly after Kyiv expressed its willingness to negotiate a ceasefire framework aimed at halting attacks in the Black Sea and on energy infrastructure. Zelenskyy's visit to France comes at a critical juncture as he meets with President Emmanuel Macron, who has remained one of Ukraine's staunchest allies during the nearly four-year conflict. The European Leaders Summit, dubbed the Coalition of the Willing, aims to discuss potential peacekeeping solutions for Ukraine, post-conflict military support to deter future aggression, and monitoring mechanisms for ceasefires affecting critical infrastructure. Addressing reporters, Zelenskyy condemned the Russian strikes, stating, "Launching such large-scale attacks after ceasefire negotiations is a clear signal to the whole world that Moscow is not going to pursue real peace." As tensions escalate, the Kremlin has insisted that any ceasefire agreement involving the Black Sea will only take effect after the lifting of specific sanctions on its agricultural sector. This condition has raised concerns in Kyiv about the sincerity of the Russian government regarding peace negotiations. Zelenskyy reiterated that the truce should be effective immediately, emphasizing that Ukraine has consistently demonstrated its commitment to peace while accusing Russia of manipulating the situation. The backdrop to these discussions is marked by a troubling pattern of ongoing hostilities. Despite Russia's claims of a ceasefire that began on March 18, Ukrainian officials report that Russian forces have launched attacks targeting energy facilities 8 times since that date. This has led to significant skepticism in Kyiv about Russia's intentions. "We have proven we are not standing in the way of peace," stated Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga, demanding that Russia demonstrate genuine interest in ending the conflict. Meanwhile, U.S. involvement in brokering peace has drawn mixed reactions. President Donald Trump, who has expressed a desire to end the war, swiftly acknowledged the complexities of the negotiations, suggesting that it could be they're dragging their feet, referring to Russia's hesitance. The U.S. administration has confirmed that while there are agreements for temporary ceasefires, the specifics remain unclear, complicating the path toward a lasting resolution. As the situation unfolds, the implications for both Ukraine and the broader geopolitical landscape are profound. Increasing sanctions pressure on Russia is seen as crucial by Ukrainian officials, who fear that any perceived leniency might embolden further aggression. The commitment of European allies, particularly in terms of military support and diplomatic pressure, will be pivotal in shaping the future of this conflict. In conclusion, as Zelenskyy and European leaders convene in Paris, the focus will be on maintaining a united front against Russian aggression while seeking pathways to peace. The ongoing exchanges of fire and the complex web of negotiations highlight the fragility of the current situation. The international community watches closely, aware that the decisions made in the coming days could significantly impact the trajectory of the war and the security of Europe as a whole. In the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, recent developments reveal a complex web of ceasefire negotiations, military engagements, and international diplomacy that continues to shape the landscape of Eastern Europe. The situation remains volatile, with both sides engaging in military operations while discussing terms for a potential ceasefire, particularly focused on the Black Sea region and energy infrastructure. On March 25, 2025, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Russian President Vladimir Putin participated in a series of talks mediated by the United States, with discussions centering on temporary ceasefires related to strikes against energy facilities and maritime security in the Black Sea. Despite these efforts, significant discrepancies remain in the interpretations of the agreements reached. The Kremlin has stipulated that any ceasefire will not take effect until certain sanctions are lifted, particularly those affecting Russian agricultural and financial institutions such as the Rosselsbank. This demand has raised concerns about the feasibility of the ceasefire and the sincerity of Russian commitments. Zelenskyy addressing the situation. emphasized that Ukraine does not view the ceasefire as contingent on sanctions relief. The agreement should be activated immediately, he stated, accusing Russia of attempting to manipulate the terms to gain leverage. Additionally, Zelenskyy has outlined a list of strategic infrastructure that Ukraine wishes to protect under the ceasefire, which has not been explicitly acknowledged by Russian officials. The lack of clarity surrounding the ceasefire details, including monitoring mechanisms, has left both sides questioning whether the agreements are genuinely enforceable. Complicating matters further, military operations continue unabated. Russian forces have intensified their assaults, reportedly targeting Ukrainian energy infrastructure even after the announcement of the ceasefire. Ukrainian officials have claimed that 8 of their energy facilities have been attacked by Russian forces since the truce was proposed. On-the-ground fighting remains fierce, particularly around key regions such as Pokrovsk and in the border areas near Kursk and Sumy, where both sides are making territorial gains and losses. In recent statements, Putin's administration has indicated that they are pleased with the progress of discussions with the U.S., yet analysts warn that Russia may be stalling for time while continuing military operations. Russia has been giving the U.S. the runaround in talks, noted military analyst Michael Clark, underscoring the challenges in reaching a comprehensive and lasting resolution. Internationally, the dynamics of the conflict are further complicated by Ukraine's relationships with its allies. Zelenskyy is currently in Paris to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron and other European leaders to discuss future security guarantees for Ukraine and strategies to strengthen its military capabilities. These discussions are crucial as Ukraine navigates its ongoing military struggles and seeks to solidify support from Western nations. As the situation evolves, the potential for renewed hostilities looms large. The Kremlin has indicated that it could withdraw from the ceasefire agreement if Ukraine continues to launch attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. This creates a precarious balancing act where both sides must navigate their military strategies while engaging in diplomacy that could lead to a more stable peace settlement. Looking ahead, the international community remains watchful as both Ukraine and Russia grapple with the realities of war and the complexities of negotiating peace. The coming weeks will likely be pivotal in determining whether a sustainable ceasefire can be achieved or if the conflict will escalate further, impacting not only the region but potentially the global geopolitical landscape. In a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, recent developments involving former President Donald Trump and his administration's interactions with Russia have sparked significant controversy and concern among lawmakers and analysts. As the ongoing war in Ukraine continues to dominate headlines, the implications of Trump's policies and the actions of his aides raise critical questions about U.S. foreign relations and national security. On March 26, 2025, it was reported that Steve Witkoff, a key envoy for Trump regarding Ukraine and the Middle East, was in Moscow during sensitive communications with other top officials from the Trump administration. An analysis by CBS News revealed that Witkoff was added to a group chat on the messaging app Signal where discussions about military operations against the Houthis in Yemen were taking place. This chat included over a dozen administration officials and unexpectedly a journalist. The timing of Witkoff's inclusion in the chat, just hours after he met with Russian President Vladimir Putin, has raised alarms regarding the security of U.S. communications and the potential for foreign intelligence compromise. Witkoff's presence in Moscow coincided with a period of heightened scrutiny over the use of Signal, a platform that, while known for its encryption capabilities, has been targeted by Russian cyber efforts. Cybersecurity experts have noted that the app, although secure, may not be the most prudent choice for discussing sensitive information in a hostile environment. Neil Ashdown, a cybersecurity consultant, emphasized that the real issue lies in whether the use of such applications aligns with established security policies, suggesting that avoiding the app in high-stakes situations is advisable. In a separate yet related incident, Witkoff's recent comments during an interview with Tucker Carlson were lambasted by lawmakers, including Representative Seth Moulton of Massachusetts, who described them as insane. During the interview, Witkoff echoed Russian narratives regarding the invasion of Ukraine and praised Putin as a super smart guy. This rhetoric, coupled with his previous role in negotiating with Russia, has intensified fears that U.S. diplomatic efforts may be undermined by those sympathetic to Russian interests. Adding to the tension, Witkoff's remarks came shortly before U.S. talks aimed at ending the war were set to resume in Saudi Arabia. His statements appeared to signal a significant shift in the U.S. stance towards Russia, particularly as Trump has notably criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy while fostering closer ties with Putin. The implications of these developments extend beyond diplomatic decorum. They could shape the future of U.S. support for Ukraine and the broader international response to Russian aggression. As the situation in Ukraine evolves, the Kremlin has indicated that any ceasefire in the Black Sea would hinge on the lifting of certain sanctions imposed by Western nations. This stance was met with skepticism by Zelenskyy, who accused Russia of attempting to manipulate the negotiations. The complex interplay between military strategy, diplomatic discourse, and cybersecurity underscores the challenges faced by the Biden administration as it navigates the remnants of the Trump era's foreign policy. With the backdrop of ongoing conflict and diplomatic maneuvering, the question remains: how will the United States reconcile its approach to Russia with the need to support its allies in Ukraine? As future negotiations unfold, the specter of past policies looms large, potentially shaping the trajectory of international relations in a time of unprecedented global tension. The unfolding narrative emphasizes not only the importance of clear and secure communication among U.S. officials but also the imperative of a cohesive and firm stance against aggression in Eastern Europe. Tensions between Russia and Ukraine have escalated sharply as both nations exchanged accusations of violating a recently brokered ceasefire agreement aimed at protecting energy infrastructure. This contentious backdrop emerged just hours after a tentative deal was announced, highlighting the fragile nature of peace efforts amid ongoing hostilities. On March 25, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirmed that Ukraine had agreed with U.S. negotiators to initiate a ceasefire concerning energy infrastructure. This agreement was preceded by 3 days of discussions in Saudi Arabia involving U.S., Ukrainian, and Russian officials. The Biden administration reported progress in negotiations aimed at a 30-day pause on attacks against energy sites and maritime operations in the Black Sea. However, these developments quickly soured as both sides accused each other of breaching the terms of the ceasefire. The Russian Defense Ministry claimed that Ukrainian drone strikes had targeted energy facilities in the Bryansk and Kursk regions, resulting in power outages for thousands of residents. The Kyiv regime is doing everything to derail the Russian-US agreements on the gradual settlement of the Ukrainian conflict, the ministry asserted. In response, Ukraine's military refuted these claims, labeling them as part of a disinformation campaign aimed at justifying continued aggression against Ukraine. Zelenskyy, speaking at a briefing in Kyiv, reaffirmed Ukraine's commitment to the ceasefire, while expressing skepticism towards Russian intentions. How Russia behaves in the coming days will reveal a lot, if not everything, he stated, emphasizing that any further military activity would necessitate a strong response from Ukraine and its allies. He added, if there are air raid alerts again, if there is renewed military activity in the Black Sea, then new measures will need to be taken specifically against Moscow. The backdrop of these accusations was intensified by a significant drone assault on Kryvyi Rih, Zelenskyy's hometown, described as one of the most extensive attacks since the war began. Local officials reported extensive damage to civilian infrastructure, although no casualties were reported. The Ukrainian Air Force indicated that they had successfully intercepted a substantial number of the 117 drones launched that night. As the situation unfolded, the Kremlin underscored its demand for the lifting of sanctions as a precondition for implementing the ceasefire agreement. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov indicated that the Black Sea security deal would only be activated after sanctions on Russian agricultural and financial sectors were eased. This was met with resistance from the European Union, which reiterated that the withdrawal of Russian military forces from Ukraine would be essential for any changes to the sanctions regime. In an effort to reinforce diplomatic efforts, Zelenskyy traveled to Paris to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron ahead of a summit focused on securing European support for Ukraine. This summit aims to establish a coalition of nations willing to offer security guarantees to Ukraine, signaling a collective movement towards a more structured peacekeeping solution should a ceasefire be reached. As both sides continue to maneuver politically and militarily, the prospect of peace remains tenuous. Zelensky's administration is keenly aware of the implications of Russia's actions on the global stage, asserting that the world must hold Moscow accountable for its continued aggression. The coming days will be pivotal in determining whether diplomatic efforts can yield a sustainable resolution to the conflict or if hostilities will reignite with even greater intensity.